Le milieu de terrain de Fulham. Haaland sur le pied gauche de chaîne, Haaland!
2 months ago, people were asking uncomfortable questions.
Do you think what we're looking at there, that stops him ever being the best player in the world, if you like?
Why had Erling Haaland gone 8 Premier League games without a non-penalty goal? Why did Manchester City's attack look controlled but not terrifying? Why did Arsenal suddenly feel like the favourites? And then in the space of 4 days, everything shifted. At Anfield, City's title hopes were hanging by a thread in the 84th minute. 3 days later, they walked onto the Etihad pitch and dismantled Fulham in 39 ruthless minutes. 3 goals, 3 different patterns, 1 warning.
And also particularly for Erling Haaland, because a lot of people said he carries the entire goal-scoring burden. However, since they signed Antoine Semenyo with another goal tonight, that is 5 in 8 games to start his Manchester City career.
A £64 million January signing, Antoine Semenyo scored, assisted, pressed like a man chasing something bigger than form.
He's come across to Man City and he's just carried on again, like he's at the same place. I think I really enjoy watching him. He reminds me of a very old school type of winger. He's not interested in like he's finished here, he's just in the right areas, but he's not interested in showboating.
Haaland ended an 8-game open play drought with a strike that didn't just hit the bottom corner, it reset the narrative. But here's what most people missed. It wasn't just that Haaland scored, it was how he scored, and more importantly, why the chance existed in the first place. Since Semenyo's arrival, City's right side has become unpredictable again. Direct running, second phase chaos, cutbacks arriving earlier, defenders no longer defending one problem, but 2 completely different ones. One stretches you vertically, one destabilizes you laterally. Together, they compress time, and when City compress time, titles start to tilt.
Are you going to be watching Brentford against Arsenal tomorrow night?
Not 3 points.
What is it?
After the game tomorrow, we'll see how many points.
The important question, will Pep Guardiola be watching Arsenal tomorrow night? Pep Guardiola has now won 15 straight games against Fulham. City have led by 3 or more goals at half-time 33 times in the Premier League era under him, more than double any other side in that period. When they build momentum in February, history tells us what usually follows in May.
Win game by game by game to be close to arrive in the last game with the chance to be champion again. The people start to say, and I had the feeling, it's over, it's over, it's over. And it's not over. It's over, will be over when it will be over. And it's not over.
Arsenal still lead. The pressure still sits in North London. But momentum just changed colour. This isn't just about a 3-0 win, it's about a structural evolution in Manchester City's attack. It's about why Haaland doesn't look isolated anymore. It's about why Semenyo might be the most important January signing in the title race. And most importantly, if this is Manchester City before they hit peak rhythm, what happens when the chemistry fully locks in? This is why this partnership isn't just dangerous. It might be the moment the title race truly flipped.
The commentator kept on saying how they haven't seen Arsenal this kind of fearful of a team this season.
Manchester City have never really been a team that loses their head. When things go wrong, they don't usually fall apart. They don't start launching hopeful balls or panicking into chaos. They tighten the screws. They hoard possession. They pin you in. They turn the match into a slow, suffocating math problem. And that's exactly why this season's most interesting City problem didn't look like a crisis at first. It looked fine. City were still controlling games, still dictating territory, still making opponents run in circles. But there was a strange feeling creeping into the stadiums and into the numbers. They were controlling matches without looking terrifying. That sounds ridiculous when you're talking about a team that still has Erling Haaland, a striker who, even now, sits on 22 goals for the season and leads the scoring race. But that's the story, because this wasn't about whether Haaland could score. It was about what happened when City's control stopped producing clean fear. Haaland didn't start the season easing into anything. He came out swinging. Look at the early match log. He opened the league campaign with a brace at Wolves, then kept stacking goals across August, September, October, including big moments against major opponents. And in that chaotic 5-4 at Craven Cottage in early December, Club Match Reports framed it as another milestone chapter in his City story.
And it was left for Haaland, and there's the landmark goal. 100 in double-quick record time in the Premier League.
Haaland hit his 100th Premier League goal for City, and in record time. So the output was there, the aura was there, the inevitability was there. Then something changed. Not because Haaland suddenly forgot how to finish, but because City's attack began to create a different type of game around him. From late December onward, the storyline got weird. His last open play league goal before Fulham came on December 20th versus West Ham, when he scored twice in a 3-0 win. After that, the feeling around Haaland shifted from unstoppable to strangely quiet. By late January, even mainstream coverage was openly calling it a rut, with 1 goal in 7 matches, and that goal being a penalty versus Brighton. And then Fulham happened. Haaland finally scored again from open play, a league drought snapped, and suddenly the temperature around City rose again. Here's the key. This wasn't a striker problem. It was a chance profile problem. City's structure is built to win territory. They want you pinned. They want your backline on the edge of the box. They want your midfielders constantly turning to face their own goal. But there's a trade-off. When City are at their most control-heavy, the game becomes predictable in one dangerous way. Opponents can defend the idea of City, not just the players. They sit in a low block. They protect zone 14. They collapse the 6-yard box. They concede the wings and dare City to be perfect with delivery. And because City are so patient, the defending side has time to shift, reset, and survive. That's when Haaland can start to look like he's missing, even while City are dominating possession. Not because he isn't moving, not because he isn't making the runs, but because the passes arrive half a second late, or one angle too wide, or after the box is already full of bodies. And when Haaland isn't being fed early, he becomes a different kind of striker. Still a threat, still occupying centre-backs, still bending the line, but not constantly arriving in that brutal, unstoppable rhythm where the defender's legs start to go. This is how you get the paradox of City. They can feel in control, while also feeling like they need one extra pass to create the same danger they used to create in 2. Think about it from a defender's perspective. When City are cycling possession around the box, you can organise, you can communicate, you can adjust your line, you can make sure someone's tracking the runner, you can double up on the wide man before the cross comes in. But when City hit you early, when the ball goes from deep to dangerous in 2 touches, there's no time to think, there's only reaction. And that's where Haaland is at his most lethal, not when he's fighting through a packed box for scraps, but when he's running onto through balls with defenders scrambling to catch up. That rhythm, the one where City move the ball quickly enough to catch you before you're set, had started to disappear. Not every game, but often enough that you could feel it. The loud version of the story is simple. Haaland's out of form. But the truer version is sharper and scarier for everyone else. Even during the so-called drought, Haaland was still sitting at the top of the scoring race, and by early to mid-February, he's still the league's headline striker. City weren't failing. They were operating at a slightly lower terror level, and in a title race that matters. Because against the best teams, the teams you'll meet in April and May, slightly less terrifying is the difference between a 1-0. That becomes a 1-1, a 2-goal cushion that becomes a nervy finish, a dominant performance that doesn't kill the game when it should. That's why Pep kept sounding dissatisfied even after wins. It's why matches could feel controlled but not closed. City was still City, but the knife wasn't always sharp. Look at some of those January performances. City would dominate possession, 60%, 65%, sometimes more. They'd complete 500, 600 passes. They'd win the territorial battle convincingly. But the final scoreline would be 1-0 or 1-1, or occasionally even a frustrating draw where they had the ball for most of the match but couldn't find that second or third goal to put it to bed. And in those moments, you'd see Haaland, isolated up front, making runs that weren't being found, dropping deep to try and get involved only to take himself out of the danger zone. He wasn't playing badly. The team wasn't playing badly. But something about the connection between City's control and City's cutting edge had gone slightly off. It's the kind of thing that's hard to quantify in traditional stats. Expected goals might still look reasonable, possession numbers would be excellent, shot counts would be respectable, but anyone watching could feel it. City needed more than 1 or 2 chances to score. They needed 3, 4, 5 clear opportunities because the clinical edge, the thing that made them feel inevitable, had dulled just enough to be noticeable. And then January arrived, and with it came the kind of signing Pep Guardiola doesn't make unless he's trying to change the texture of his attack. When Manchester City spend big money in January, it's rarely about nice depth. It's usually a signal that Pep Guardiola has spotted a structural need, a specific profile the squad doesn't naturally provide in enough volume, and he wants it now. Not in the summer. That's why Antoine Semenyo isn't just a headline signing. He's a profile signing. City didn't buy him to be another neat passer inside a neat system. They bought him to bring a different kind of edge to their attack. More urgency, more penetration, more first contact menace, without breaking the rules that keep City stable. The deal told you it was serious. £64 million, long contract, no pretending it was a gamble. But the more telling part was the output that followed him to Manchester. Before the move, Semenyo had already put up 10 Premier League goals and 3 assists for Bournemouth this season. That's not a purple patch. That's steady production in a team that doesn't dominate the ball every week. It is a luxury finisher waiting for the perfect chance. He was doing it as the player Bournemouth leaned on to tilt matches, carrying the ball into contact and still coming out with it, making runs that forced defenders to turn, winning duels, taking shots, and living in that uncomfortable space between fullback and centre-back, doing the dirty work that turns pressure into chances. In Pep terms, that's a rare combination. Direct enough to unsettle a settled block, strong enough to take contact and keep his balance, relentless enough to press like a City forward, and flexible enough to work across the front line. And that matters because City's old issue wasn't, we can't keep the ball. It was, we can keep the ball and still struggle to land the first punch. Semenyo is built to help City land it earlier. Here's the part that makes Fulham feel like a continuation, not an outlier. Semenyo didn't arrive slowly and then have a good night. He started stacking evidence right away. His FA Cup debut against Exeter wasn't a quiet introduction. He scored, got involved, created chances. The crowd saw it immediately. This wasn't someone easing into the system. This was someone who moves defenders rather than simply circulating the ball. Then came the Carabao Cup semi-final, first leg away at Newcastle. Second appearance, second goal. And he even had another effort ruled out, which matters because it shows his night wasn't built on one lucky touch. He was repeatedly getting into scoring zones, making himself a problem Newcastle couldn't ignore. His Premier League debut came at Old Trafford. City lost that day, but Semenyo's role was already clear. Right side outlet, early runner, quick connector. The kind of player Pep uses to stretch the match when the middle gets crowded. Against Wolves in the league, he scored again. This is where the narrative sharpens. He wasn't only scoring in cups, he was directly helping City bank points when the title race pressure was rising. Then Spurs, another goal, another early punch. Even when results weren't perfect, his contributions kept repeating. City were getting out in front faster, and Semenyo kept being involved. Back in the Carabao Cup semi-final second leg against Newcastle, he delivered a cross that became a key goal in killing the tie. The kind of action that doesn't always show up as an assist in the cleanest way, but absolutely shifts a match. So by the time Fulham arrived, the theme was already established. Semenyo wasn't adapting to City. City were already adapting around him. Then came Fulham, and the story got a clean headline. He didn't just score, he scored and assisted, while City were 3 up before half-time. But the most important detail wasn't the scoreline, it was the type of goal he scored. The type City haven't always manufactured consistently this season. A close-range finish off a loose moment, the kind of chance that appears when you have players who attack second balls, arrive at awkward angles and keep defenders under constant strain. That's what Pep buys, not just polish. He buys a player who can create goals in matches that aren't perfect and still do it inside the team's structure. This is why Semenyo fits City's math. City's equation has always been clear. Win territory, win the ball back quickly, create high-quality shots, stop counters with strong rest defense, repeat until the opponent breaks. The risk of being too perfect is that you can create a match an opponent can survive mentally. They settle into their shape, block the middle, and wait for you to overplay. Semenyo changes the texture of those matches because he forces defenders to deal with things that are harder to time and harder to read. The early carry that turns a safe possession into a threat. The burst behind the fullback before the line can reset. The second phase arrival when the box thinks the danger is over. The duel you didn't want in the channel you tried to protect. The shot that comes a pass earlier than you're prepared for. And this is where Haaland comes back into the story, because the moment City's right side becomes sharper and more aggressive, Haaland stops living on the edge of a packed box, waiting for perfection. He starts getting what elite strikers thrive on. Space arriving earlier than defenders can organize themselves, service arriving before the box is fully loaded, moments where one defender steps out, and that's enough. That's why Fulham matters, not as an isolated performance, but as proof that City's attack can now hurt teams through multiple routes at a faster tempo with more variety. And once that becomes consistent, the title race stops being about can City catch Arsenal? It becomes about a more uncomfortable question. What happens if City find their finishing rhythm at the same time they've added a new way to open games up? This is where the bigger picture clicks into place. This isn't just two players combining, it's an entire attacking ecosystem starting to look sharper, more varied and harder to predict. Because right now, City aren't attacking in one voice. They're attacking in layers. City still build the way Pep wants. Patient circulation, field tilt, pressure after loss. But what's changed is the variety of final actions. Instead of one obvious pattern, work it wide, recycle, cross into a loaded box, City are increasingly creating chances from early deliveries before the defense is set. Third man runs from midfield, half-space combinations that end in cutbacks, and late arrivals from deeper midfielders who can actually finish. That's why the attack feels more dangerous. Teams aren't just defending space anymore, they're defending multiple profiles arriving in the same zones. Take Bernardo Silva. His season isn't about volume shooting, it's about control of the middle moments, the touches that keep City in the opponent's half, the turns that pull markers out, the disguised passes that start the move you don't see coming. This season, he's produced 5 assists across all competitions, with 4 in the league. That matters because when City are at their most dangerous, they aren't forcing things. They're making your defensive shape move until one tiny gap becomes a chance. Bernardo is the player who keeps that pressure intelligent rather than frantic. Phil Foden is the between-the-lines threat returning at the right time. His value is simple. He turns City's possession into direct end product. This season, he's on 10 goals and 4 assists across all competitions, including 7 league goals and 2 league assists. And that ties directly into what we saw against Fulham. His layoff helped trigger Haaland's finish, and reports noted it as his first goal involvement in a long run. When Foden is producing again, defenders can't just hold their line and protect the box, because Foden's threat forces midfielders to step, and when they step, City slips something behind them. Rayan Cherki is the new playmaker who adds invention without slowing the game. His biggest contribution is that he gives City a different type of creativity, less predictable, more improvised, more comfortable receiving in tight spaces and turning pressure into advantage. In league terms, he's already put up 3 goals and 7 assists in 20 matches. That's a serious creative return, and it changes the geometry of City's attack, because now City don't only have creators from deep, they have creators inside the block where one touch can break the line. Tijjani Reijnders represents one of the most important shifts in how City look. The midfield isn't only controlling tempo, midfielders are finishing moves. Reijnders has 5 Premier League goals and 2 assists this season. That's crucial in title races because low blocks are built to suffocate the striker. So the team that wins is often the one whose midfielders punish the space at the edge of the box. Reijnders gives City that extra runner who turns good possession into goal threat. Jeremy Doku changes matchups. He forces fullbacks into emergency defending, and even when he doesn't score, he bends the defense in a way that makes the next pass more dangerous. In the league, 1 goal and 4 assists in 20 matches. And his season rhythm has been interrupted by a muscle injury spell around mid-December. That context matters. City haven't even had Doku at full continuity, and yet the attack is still accelerating. If his sharpness fully returns, the left side becomes a constant either foul him or chase him problem. Nico O'Reilly is one of those Pep developments that changes the feel of a team. A player listed in one position but used as a multi-role piece in the attacking structure. He's already logged 33 appearances with 3 goals and 5 assists across competitions. That matters because he doesn't just support, he arrives, he connects, he finishes moves like he did against Fulham when Semenyo slipped him in and he finished confidently to make it 2-0. When City get goals from players like O'Reilly, defending them becomes exhausting, because now you're not only tracking forwards, you're tracking the full structure. Matheus Nunes is the quiet story inside this louder attacking surge, a player with midfield instincts operating in wider right-back zones and still contributing to dangerous sequences. Against Fulham, it was his delivery that set the first goal in motion. His cross caused the loose moment that Semenyo finished, and that's the point. City are now getting real attacking value from that role, whether it's overlaps, early balls, or pressure actions that keep the opponent pinned. It turns the right side into a conveyor belt. Ball wide, delivery early, second action arrives, goal threat. The Fulham match is the clean case study because City scored 3 times in the first half, and every goal showed a different route. First goal, wide delivery, loose moment, finish. Nunes cross triggers it, the ball breaks to Semenyo and he buries it. Second goal, combination play, runner released, calm finish. Semenyo slips O'Reilly through and he finishes with the composure of someone who's been there before. Third goal, edge of box connection, strike before the defense resets. Foden lays it off to Haaland and he doesn't need a second touch. That's what makes City feel scarier. It's not one trick, it's a menu. And when you add creative profiles like Cherki, finishing midfielders like Reijnders, connectors like Bernardo, a revived Foden, the direct threat of Doku, plus runners like O'Reilly, and a right-side engine like Nunes, you get a City attack that can hurt you before you're set, after you think you've survived, and from zones you thought were safe. This is what makes a title race real. Not comfort, not control, but momentum shifting when it matters most. Manchester City aren't just winning, they're evolving. The attack is sharper, the patterns are faster, the finishing is arriving from more angles. Arsenal still lead, but now every match feels heavier, because when City start peaking in February, history tells us what that usually means in May. And if this version of City keeps building, the title race isn't just alive, it's about to become relentless.